This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Hey, what's up and welcome to Hot Takes, the show where I react to the comment section. This is a great week to do it. Draft content is great because I love talking about football. I love talking about these young prospects, but also it's a great time because like a lot of people have a lot of different opinions in the draft, and like honestly, every opinion that you have about a prospect, good or bad, it's not equally as valid, like, but it's fair. Like you can, if you are excited about a prospect, who is there to tell you shouldn't be, right? Like it's just a time where you don't got to debate the legitimacy of somebody's take. You could just talk about and conversate about the take. You feel me? I hope that makes sense. But first video we're going to look at is the Browns draft the Cleveland kid at 54. My guy Robert says, I had to block Mike Hall in high school twice. Dude was manhandle every lineman in the league with ease. He was making plays that were inconceivable because of his quickness and his freakish ability. For example, we ran a QB quick draw, but he beat the block so fast that it looked like a sack on a pass play. Aaron Donald at Pitt type stuff. Remember, go look at that tape. That's crazy tape. He would also run the ball and goal line because he was so fast, nobody could deny him. I have a gut feeling he's going to be a great pass rusher next to Miles. It's amazing to see a man you played against go to the NFL. You know, that's a great outlook to have on the whole thing, and it's a great experience for you to have. There's a lot of people in Northeast Ohio that got did like that by Mike Hall. There's a lot of people in the Big Ten that got did like that by Mike Hall. And it's always interesting to hear stories about people who played against these dudes who were destined to play for, you know, Alabama, Ohio State, destined to make the NFL. And when you run up against them in high school, just how, like, I'm on the search to find somebody who actually played against Nick Chubb in high school, because I got to know. I gotta know what y'all did, dog, because I look at the pictures of Nick Chubb in high school and I'm like, nah, man, there's no way I would forfeit on sight if that kid showed up. I don't even want to get started with Myles Garrett. So if anybody knows anybody who played against Myles Garrett or Nick Chubb, I need those anecdotes in the comment section, please, because that's gotta be crazy. But yeah, the thing I love about Mike Hall as a prospect is he has skills that you don't gotta explain, right? Like sometimes I get on here and I like a player, but I gotta explain to you why I like that player. Now that doesn't mean that that player isn't as good or something like that, but that does mean that that player has skills. He's usually more skilled when you gotta explain why they are really good at what they do in detail, because it's not readily apparent. Mike Hall, you watch one game of Mike Hall, you watch one practice at the Senior Bowl of Mike Hall, and you're like, oh, that's okay. He's incredibly quick off the ball. He has incredible burst. He does have some freakish ability. I like his frame. I like his size. I like his build at the defensive tackle position. I know some people were kind of cynically throwing out a Perion Winfrey comp, but I think on the field, that comp's not that bad of a thing, especially we're talking about a prospect. I thought Perion was a really good prospect. Mike Hall, similarly. Perion's failings weren't as a prospect or even as a football player. They were stuff that he did outside the building. So with Mike Hall, you don't worry about that, right? Great leader, seems like, you know, the type of dude that kind of brings a locker room together. When I was at the Senior Bowl, and this is why it's important to go to these things like the Senior Bowl, because yeah, it's cool to see like the one-on-ones and the team drills and everything, but you can get that on tape. What you can't get on tape is watching how these guys interact, watching how these guys fall into the dynamic of the Senior Bowl? Who becomes a leader of the team that week? Who do people gravitate around that week? Who do people, for lack of a more elegant term, really fuck with that week? And Mike Hall was somebody that everybody wanted to kick it with, right? Like everybody was like, getting juiced up with Mike. Everybody was getting pumped up with Mike. It seemed like Mike was running the aux cord type energy, right? That's somebody that you want to bring in your locker room. That's somebody who's going to be a great influence in your locker room. He seems mature beyond his age. Like he's only 20 and he was doing that. Yeah, man. I think the bones are there for this to be a great player. But a lot of people that get drafted have the bones to be a great player. It's about capitalizing on that. And now we're on that journey with Mike Hall to see if he could do that. I hope he can because, I like him a lot as a prospect. Ricochet TV says, pissed we passed on Payton Wilson and now he gets to pair with Watt. Come on, man. SMH. Hey. I'm personally not a big fan of Payton Wilson. Like that, I wasn't pounding the table for Payton Wilson. Now that doesn't mean he's going to be a bad player. That just means he wasn't a prospect that I liked. Now I think sometimes we tend to do this, and I think we have another comment that proves this point. We tend to do this whenever you like a player, and then the Steelers draft that player. We act like the Steelers just took Myles Garrett in the 6th round or some shit like that. Like, oh, I can't believe we let him slip through our hands. He's going to haunt us for decades to come and all this stuff. Hey, man, Payton Wilson might become a good player. Payton Wilson might be a dude who plays special teams primarily. Payton Wilson might be a dude we forget is on the Steelers. Payton Wilson might be a solid linebacker. But why we acting like it's not a strong possibility that he pairs with TJ Watt. That's some kind of superstar duo. Like, I don't know. I think we doing a bit much here. Me personally, I think we doing a bit much. And that's even me giving room to be wrong on Payton Wilson because the injury history is kind of crazy on him. Not a huge fan of his game either, but even if he pans out, like that's not going to be a pick I don't see him being like one of the best 3 linebackers in the league or anything like that. K-Dude says if it were for injuries, he would have went in the late first or mid-second. He's talking about Zack Zenner, by the way. I kind of disagree with this take, and I'll tell you why I disagree with this take. The issue with Zack Zenner and why he might have, quote unquote, failed to the Cleveland Browns isn't because he was injured, so to say. Like, this isn't a red shirt situation where he can't play for a year. He's already ready to go for rookie minicamp. So the injury, if the tape were amazing, the injury wouldn't have stopped him from going anywhere. Because it's also a leg injury, not a ligament injury. So teams would have took him. The issue with the injury is a bit more nuanced than that. And because of the nuance, I don't think we could just straight up say he would have been a first or a mid-second round pick if it weren't for the injury. Because if he weren't injured, then what could have changed his stock dramatically would have been playing at the Senior Bowl, would have been being able to test at the combine athletically so people can get some questions answered on him that they have just by looking at his tape. But he was not able to do that. And if that's part of the projection, if that's part of the equation for the if he didn't get injured thing, then that requires a lot more projecting. Like, we are projecting that he would have did great at the Senior Bowl. We don't know what he would have done because he didn't go. We're projecting that he would have tested great athletically. We don't know because he didn't go. So I think he went where he would have went based on his tape. He needed the draft process to move up into the first or second round, because we had questions about some things based on his tape. How does he do against top tier talent? He didn't really play that well against the bigger schools that he went against last year. How will he adjust to flipping sides at guard? How will he adjust to pulling? Like, how will he adjust to being used how an NFL team will ask him to use? Can he win a rep, or can he win reps consistently when he's going up against guys he can't just outpower? Like, I would have loved to see him go up against T'Vondre Sweat and get some reps in against him, because that's like that would tell me, can he win with finesse, or does he just get caught trying to win with power all the time? There's some real questions he needed to answer based on his tape, is why I'm saying. So I don't think the injury is what kept him out. I think his inability to participate in the draft process which is due to the injury, but it's a whole projection thing there. So I think he went where he would have went based on his tape. The Browns get a steal with Jamari Thrash. Shout out to Max Out Dojo. Bro has been on the dog check for years consistently. Yeah, man. Shout out to my dog, Max Out Dojo. He's been a day one dude for real. The next one is from M. Makara, who says, don't forget he played last year with one wrist. He had half of his career drops last year, and that's a pretty damn good hint on why they rocketed up like that. He's a third day wide receiver, so I'm not expecting him to be anything great, but I do think his hands aren't as bad as people think they are. I saw him play. I didn't think that he's a dropsy kind of guy. Like, usually you could tell what wide receivers are going to be drop crazy is when those drops happen, right? Like, Johnny Wilson is somebody I'm like, nah, I don't care what somebody tells me about them drops. Those drops are concerning, because those drops were like, ooh, somebody coming. Oh, I'm going through the middle. Ooh, I'm running kind of blind. I can't see. Oh, like those kind of drops are what concern me, because I'm like, that's an instinct drop. You know what I mean? That's your gut making you drop that ball, which worries me. Jamari don't got none of that. He just probably had a broken wrist. So I think that's what that was all about too. Day 3 of the draft. So let's talk about some of the day 3 picks. Thinking about the Browns draft, reconciling the fact that the Steelers, Bengals, and Ravens had more draft capital, and with that, were clearly able to add more value than the Browns. I came to the following realization: the draft value should really include Jerry Jeudy, and 1/3 of the Watson impact. Looking at it that way has me feeling better. Yeah, and also, like, if the Browns' goal is to win right now, and while you always want to draft well so you can build towards the future, winning right now and having a great draft class, those things aren't synonymous, right? A lot of the players that Steelers added this year, like outside of Fontanu, probably not going to play that much this year, right? The same thing with the Bengals, and the same thing with the Ravens. Like, they all drafted guys in the first round. Maybe Nate Wiggins makes an impact for Baltimore year one. Maybe he doesn't. But what's going to matter is, the guys who are 3-4 years into their NFL career. Those are going to be guys who are going to play a lot for all these teams. So, yeah. But also, right now, I think the Browns and I think the rest of the AFC North are kind of focused on trying to win this year too. Fatty Hattie says they should have taken Payton Wilson. Now he's in Pittsburgh, be a thorn in our side of the decade. Again, man, we be doing too much. We really do be doing too much. Like, I'm not saying you got to hate on the pick just because Pittsburgh did it. Hell, man, Baltimore took my favorite guy in this draft. But just because I think he's going to be a good player don't mean that I think, the Browns messed up because they didn't take the guy I wanted. Like, I try to stay away from encouraging and engaging in they didn't take who I wanted draft analysis. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't want to be that dude. Like, I want to be able to just try to evaluate what the team did instead of evaluate what I think they should have did. Because one is more about making me feel better, and the other is about evaluating if the team got better. And I find that part to be more important than, whatever the first part does. So let's get into the questions for this video about my grade for the Browns draft. Michael says, seeing Jim Schwartz's reaction to Mike Hall pick makes me feel pretty good about it. Clearly, Schwartz sees a lot of potential in the kid. If he develops, he's going to make himself a lot of money generating pressures from the inside. Yeah, he was also excited for Ika last year, so I just think Jim's just a high energy type dude. But it seemed like that entire room was really excited to turn in that card for Michael Hall. So hopefully that reflects on his play on Sundays. And to me, it reads that they had him higher than 54 on that board. So it's always a good thing when they get somebody earlier. Michael says continuity at GM and head coach means you draft fit schemes. Players are drafted to fill roles. This is what we are seeing. Absolutely. When you have continuity at GM and head coach, it's no mistake that the teams that have that have better players on average, right? Like, because you're drafting players for roles and positions and skill sets that they're going to be utilized by the head coach, because it's the same thing, right? That's why Pittsburgh's able to draft well, because they know what they're looking for. They know what they need to draft when they're looking for that. And that player knows that, hey, I'm going to be doing this. This is going to be what happens, instead of what happened with the Browns for years, which is this GM drafted you to do this thing. Then 2 years later, that GM got fired. A new GM got put in and a new head coach. And this GM telling you one thing, maybe the coach telling you the same thing, maybe the coach telling you something else. But then that coach gets fired and that coach gets, and then you just end up getting lost in shuffle. Ain't no plan for you. So that's the great thing about continuity and head coaching and GM. These teams have plans. Well, the Browns have plans for every draft pick that they select, and that's a beautiful thing. But that's it for Hot Takes. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.